I heard him on the phone in the pantry, his voice hushed. It carried a tone of ingratiating panic I had never heard before. Yes, it's my fault. I forgot to mention it earlier. But my friend was just in the area. It was a last-minute thing. She's only staying for 2 nights. Please, don't be angry. The children are here. The voice on the other end was a muffled but sharp male tone. Even from a distance, I could feel its chilling effect. Eliza's voice dropped even lower, almost a sob. I know the rules. I'll go and tidy the guest room again. Right now. I promise she won't touch your study or the wine cellar. I'll make 2 extra dishes for dinner. They won't be from a recipe book. He hung up when he turned around, taking a deep breath. His face was already adorned with the familiar, gentle smile I knew so well, as if the subservient woman from a moment ago was just a figment of my imagination. Hey, Meg. It's all good. That was just Martin, asking what we wanted for dinner tonight. He brushed a strand of hair from his forehead. A faint red mark, barely noticeable, circled his wrist. I looked past him at the 4 children huddled together on the living room rug. They were as beautiful as porcelain dolls, but eerily silent. The little joy of our reunion suddenly sank in my heart. Something was wrong. This was Eliza Chen, my best friend of 30 years. The happiness radiating from her face and the invisible tension in this beautiful suburban house felt like a layer of perfectly applied frosting, hiding something spoiled underneath. My name is Megan. Meg to my friends. Eliza and I have been inseparable since we were kids running around in diapers. 15 years ago. Right after college graduation, she flew off like a happy little bird to a new life, marrying a man she described as a romantic, considerate East Coast intellectual. Our connection dwindled over the years, from frequent video calls to occasional holiday texts. For the last few years, it had been reduced to the perfectly curated photos she posted on a private family blog. 4 angelic, mixed-race children, with the corner of a luxurious-looking house always visible in the background. She had become the envy of our old high school friends. A successful husband, a beautiful home in a wealthy suburb, a flock of children, and a face that time had seemed to graciously ignore. Meanwhile, I was in Chicago, working a mid-level job at a mid-level marketing firm for mid-level pay. I'd had a few mid-level relationships that went nowhere. Now, pushing 40, I was unmarried and childless, with some savings in the bank but a million miles away from what anyone would call successful. This trip to Boston was never in the plan. A major project at work was suddenly canceled, leaving me with an unexpected vacation and a decent project bonus. On a whim, I bought a plane ticket. While planning my itinerary, I inexplicably added the small, affluent Massachusetts town where Eliza lived. I wanted to surprise her. It had been 15 years. Following the address she'd given me ages ago, I dragged my suitcase through a series of trains and Ubers, finally finding the secluded residential area on the edge of town. The detached house, with its meticulously manicured lawn, was certainly beautiful. But it felt smaller than the mansion I'd pictured. I rang the doorbell. An 8 or 9-year-old boy with blonde hair and dark almond-shaped eyes opened the door. He looked at me warily and asked something in a clipped, formal tone. "I'm looking for Eliza," I said, my voice a little shaky. The boy turned and called out, "Mom!" And then I saw her. Eliza, wearing an apron, her hands dusted with flour, came running from the kitchen. She froze in the doorway, staring at me for a full 5 seconds. Her eyes widened. "Meg?" Her voice was a high-pitched shriek of disbelieving joy. The next second, she threw herself at me, hugging me tightly. "Oh my God, it's really you! What are you doing here?" "Why didn't you tell me?" I hugged her back just as hard, my nose stinging with tears. The 15 years had left their mark, but fewer than I'd expected. She was still beautiful, with a mature fullness and a gentle grace she hadn't possessed in her youth. Only the fine lines around her eyes and the slight softness of her skin reminded me that we were no longer young. "Wanted to surprise you," I said, laughing and taking a step back to look at her. "Damn, Eliza. You haven't aged a day. I'm old. I'm a mother of 4. She laughed, playfully punching my arm, though her eyes were red. She pulled me inside. Come in. Come in. How did you even find this place? The house was clean. Unnaturally clean. The furniture was a minimalist, restoration hardware style, all muted grays, whites, and natural woods. It was sleek, but it had no soul. It felt like a showroom. The 4 children, 3 boys and a girl, ranging from about 4 to 10, were sitting quietly on the living room rug, working on puzzles or reading. When I came in, they merely glanced up with curiosity, none of the usual noise or excitement of children meeting a stranger. Kids, this is Auntie Meg, Mommy's best friend from Chicago, Eliza announced in English, then repeated it in a softer tone I didn't recognize. The children murmured hellos in unison, their voices polite and tinged with a restraint that didn't belong to their age. Where's your husband? I asked casually, as I set down my bag. Martin? He's at work. He won't be back until this evening, Eliza said, taking my coat. Her movements were graceful, but I noticed how she carefully smoothed a wrinkle out of the lapel before aligning it perfectly with the curve of the hanger. This house is incredible, I said sincerely, walking over to the large windows overlooking a small but exquisitely designed garden. It's all right, she smiled. A lot of work to keep up, though. She turned and headed for the kitchen. What can I get you? Tea? Coffee? Oh, just sit down. Let me get you something to eat. You must be exhausted. Her warmth was genuine, but I felt a taut string of anxiety running beneath it. It was while she was bustling in the kitchen, as I was helping her wash some fruit, that I heard her make that hushed, desperate phone call. I saw her face transform in an instant, from panic and pleading to placid tenderness. My heart sank. This man, Martin, whom I hadn't even met, was already casting an uncomfortable shadow. Eliza soon returned with iced tea and homemade cookies. We sat in the living room, catching up on the years. She asked about my job, my love life, her tone full of concern, but also, I thought, a sliver of pity from someone who had made it. When I mentioned I was still single and my career was just so-so, she sighed softly and took my hand. Meg, don't work yourself to death. A woman needs a family. Look at me, it's busy and tiring, but I feel secure. Martin is a good provider for us. As she said this, her eyes darted away, and she unconsciously wiped her hands on her apron. As long as he's good to you, I said, patting her hand, not mentioning the phone call. Your kids are so well behaved. How do you do it? Martin is very strict. He has a lot of rules. The children are used to it, she said with a smile. It was a perfect smile, but it felt rehearsed. It's better when they're quiet, not like us when we were kids, running wild like a couple of tomboys. The atmosphere finally warmed up when we started reminiscing about our childhood. She talked about the time I got into a fight for her. I talked about the time she helped me write a love letter. We laughed until we cried. The children would occasionally look over, a hint of curiosity in their eyes, as if they'd never seen their mother laugh so freely. Time flew by in a haze of nostalgia. In the early evening, we heard a key turn in the front door. Eliza practically leaped off the sofa. Her wide smile tightened into something more composed, more placid. She hurried to the entryway, Martin's home. I stood up too. The door opened, and a tall, imposing man walked in. He had dark brown hair, gray-blue eyes, and sharp features. He was wearing a perfectly tailored suit and overcoat. Probably in his mid-40s. He was handsome and carried an air of effortless authority. This was Martin, the man Eliza married. Darling, you're home, Eliza said, her voice as soft as honey as she took his briefcase and coat. This is my best friend I've told you so much about, Megan. Martin's gaze fell on me, a polite, impeccable smile spreading across his face. Welcome, Miss Jo. Eliza speaks of you often. It's quite a surprise to have you here. He extended a hand. I shook it. His grip was firm and powerful, the handshake timed perfectly. A true gentleman. Please, call me Meg. Sorry for dropping in like this. Martin, not at all. Any friend of Eliza's is a friend of ours. He smiled, his eyes scanning the living room. They paused for a second on the children, who immediately sat up straighter. He looked back at Eliza, his smile unchanged, but his tone held a new, subtle edge. How is dinner coming along? Meg has come a long way. We should treat her to a feast. It's almost ready, Eliza replied instantly. I bought fresh salmon and made a soup. Excellent. Martin nodded. He turned to me. Meg, please, make yourself at home. I'm just going to change. He went upstairs, his steps firm and even. Eliza visibly relaxed, shot me a quick smile, and hurried back to the kitchen. Dinner was lavish and beautifully presented. Martin sat at the head of the table, his manners elegant, his conversation witty. He asked me about my travels and about life in Chicago, feigning genuine interest, but I couldn't shake the feeling that his smile never quite reached his eyes. Behind the politeness was a cool, detached assessment. Throughout the meal, the 4 children ate in silence, making almost no noise. They handled their cutlery with flawless precision. They only spoke in short, respectful answers when Martin addressed them directly. Eliza was constantly serving Martin, cutting meat for the children, and barely eating anything herself. That same placid smile fixed on her face. Martin mentioned he was a senior executive at a medical device company. The work is demanding. The pressure is immense, he said, sipping his red wine and looking at Eliza. That's why order and tranquility at home are so important to me. Thankfully, Eliza manages the household perfectly. And the children are so well behaved. Eliza lowered her eyes. It's my duty, she murmured. What do you do for work, Meg? Martin suddenly asked me. I'm in marketing for a trading company, I answered honestly. Ah, trade. That must be difficult, especially for a woman. He nodded, his tone flat. Eliza used to think about working, but I believe that a woman's most important stage is the home. Her greatest achievement is managing her family well. Isn't that right, darling? Eliza looked up, met Martin's gaze for a fleeting moment, then quickly looked down again and whispered, Yes, of course. Eliza is clearly a wonderful wife and mother, I said, trying to smooth things over, though a sour taste was forming in my mouth. His words sounded reasonable, but coming from him, they felt like a condescending verdict. After dinner, Eliza put the children to bed, and Martin invited me to the living room for a nightcap. I hear the economy in the Midwest is booming. Lots of opportunity, he said, swirling the brandy in his glass. But the competition must be fierce. A woman like you, traveling alone, is very independent, very brave. It's all right. Just seeing the sights, I said. It's easy when you're on your own. Not like me, with a whole family to support. He chuckled, a strange look in his eyes. But freedom comes at a price, doesn't it? I smiled and didn't answer. Eliza came back from the kitchen and sat on the sofa next to Martin, though she left a small, deliberate space between them. She had reverted to the quiet, docile woman I first saw, her face smiling, but her eyes constantly flicking towards Martin, as if gauging his mood. Martin asked a few more innocuous questions about my trip. I said I'd probably stay for 2 or 3 days. Eliza hasn't seen a friend in a long time. You should stay and keep her company, Martin said, sounding very reasonable. However, I have to work late for the next few days on an important project. You two will have to look after yourselves. You go do your work. It's important, Eliza said quickly. Is the guest room to your satisfaction, Meg? Martin asked me. It's lovely, very comfortable. Good. I'm a light sleeper, so this house was built with excellent soundproofing. If you need anything during the night, just let Eliza know. His tone was pleasant, but the message was clear. Okay, I'll be sure to be quiet. I nodded. After a little while longer, Martin announced he had work emails to attend to and disappeared into his study. The moment the door clicked shut, the air in the living room seemed to flow again. Eliza visibly relaxed and stuck her tongue out at me, her voice a conspiratorial whisper. He's always like that when he's working. Don't mind him. Of course not, I said, looking at the closed door. He seems to treat you well. Oh, he does. Eliza answered quickly, taking my hand. He's just a bit serious. You know, that traditional East Coast upbringing. So many rules. But he's a responsible family man. All the money he earns, he brings home. He doesn't fool around. A man like that is hard to find these days. She sounded like she was trying to convince me. And perhaps herself. The children seem very afraid of him, I said, hesitating. Eliza's smile faded slightly. Not afraid. Respectful. Martin has high standards for their upbringing. He believes rules and discipline are crucial for their development. And look, they're so polite and well-behaved, aren't they? That was true. I looked over at the children, who, even after their father had left, were still sitting quietly, speaking in whispers. They were too well-behaved. Come on, I'll show you to your room. You must be tired, Eliza said, changing the subject. The guest room was on the first floor, clean and impersonal, with an ensuite bathroom. Get some rest. Let me know if you need anything, Eliza said, helping me make the bed. Martin leaves early tomorrow. We can have a real chat then. I can show you around town, though there's not much to see. Sounds great, I said, watching her bustle around. Suddenly I asked, Eliza, are you happy? Her movements paused for a second. She didn't turn around. Of course, I'm happy, her voice came back, laced with a smile. I have a husband, children, a house. What more could I ask for? Don't be silly. She finished with the bed, gave me a few more instructions, and left, closing the door behind her. I lay in the strange bed, wide awake. The reunion wasn't what I had imagined. Eliza was warm, Martin was polite, the children were obedient. The family looked perfect, harmonious, but the small details, like grains of sand, were grating on my senses. Eliza's panic on the phone, her rapid-fire change of expression, the children's silence in front of their father, Martin's impeccable but cold courtesy, and this house, so clean it felt sterile. Maybe I was overthinking it. Maybe this was just their way of life, a product of Martin's rigid personality. Maybe Eliza was just overly concerned with her husband's feelings. After all, she was in a foreign country, far from family and friends. Her husband and children were her entire world. I turned over, forcing myself to stop thinking. Maybe a one-on-one chat with Eliza tomorrow would reveal a more genuine picture. Outside the window, the moonlight was cool and foreign. I closed my eyes, but I could still hear the faint clinking of cutlery from dinner, a sound of trained, meticulous quiet. The next morning, I was awakened by a series of faint but rhythmic sounds. It was 6:30 a.m. The noise was coming from the kitchen. I got up and quietly opened my door. The hallway was silent, the living room empty. A light was on in the kitchen, along with the deliberately muffled clatter of dishes. I walked over and saw Eliza, already fully dressed in an apron, preparing breakfast. On the counter were elegant porcelain plates. She was cutting fruit, each piece almost identical in size. A pot of oatmeal was simmering on one burner, while bacon and eggs sizzled on another. "You're up so early," I whispered. She jumped, startled. The knife in her hand paused. She turned to me with a smile. "Did I wake you? I'm sorry. I'm used to it. Martin and the kids eat at 7. Then he leaves for work, and the older two have to get to school. Let me help," I said, stepping into the kitchen. No, you go get ready." "It's almost done," she said quickly, her hands moving even faster. Seeing her whirlwind of activity, I didn't insist. By the time I came out from my room, the breakfast table was set. Each place had a plate with a fried egg, bacon, and roasted tomato, a few slices of whole wheat toast, a small bowl of oatmeal, and a dish of perfectly cut fruit. The children were already seated quietly. Martin came downstairs, dressed in a crisp shirt and suit, his hair impeccably combed. Good morning, Meg. Did you sleep well? He asked with a polite nod. Very well. Please, join us. He took his seat at the head of the table. Breakfast was a silent affair, punctuated only by the faint sounds of chewing and cutlery against plates. Martin scrolled through the news on his phone, occasionally asking his eldest son a question or two about school. The boy's answers were short and precise. Eliza barely ate, constantly attending to the youngest child, wiping his mouth and tearing his toast into small pieces. I have a business dinner tonight. I probably won't be home, Martin said after his last bite, dabbing his mouth with a napkin. Okay, I know. Eliza nodded. You should take Meg out and show her around, he said, standing and picking up his briefcase. Eliza immediately went to help him with his overcoat. Oh, Martin said, pausing at the door as if he'd just remembered something. He turned back to Eliza. That blue folder on my desk in the study, don't touch it. I need it for a meeting tomorrow. His tone was casual, but Eliza's body tensed almost imperceptibly. I won't. Don't worry, she replied instantly. Martin nodded at me again and left. The moment the front door closed, I felt not only Eliza but all 4 children let out a collective, inaudible sigh of relief. The youngest child even broke into a small smile, which was quickly quelled by a look from his older brother. Mom, can we talk now? The eldest son asked quietly in English. Quietly. You can, Eliza smiled, starting to clear the table. Hannah, take your brother and sister upstairs to get ready for school. The 2 older children went upstairs. The 2 younger ones started playing in the living room. Only then did Eliza truly relax. She poured herself a glass of water and leaned against the counter. It's like this every day, I said, helping her wipe the table. You get used to it, she said, rubbing her temples. It's not so bad, just a lot of rules. He runs the house like he runs his company timetables, codes of conduct, everything spelled out. I wasn't used to it at first, but now I think it's good. Everything is orderly. And what about you? Don't you get bored? I asked, looking into her eyes. She looked away, out the window. Bored? With all these kids? I'm too busy to be bored. There are other moms in the neighborhood. We have coffee sometimes. It's just not like back home, with lots of friends and noise. She paused, then looked at me, a genuine light in her eyes. But it's so good you're here. We're going to have fun today. I'll take you to the old town. It's small, but it has character. We'll have lunch out. I know a great cafe. Her excitement was contagious, and I temporarily pushed my doubts aside. Maybe I was just overthinking. Every couple has their own way. That morning, Eliza drove us, with the 2 younger children, to the town's historic center. Cobblestone streets, colorful colonial-era houses, and lazy pigeons. It was indeed charming. Eliza became a lively tour guide, talking about the architecture and history, her expression animated. It was like we were teenagers again, skipping school to wander the city. The 2 children were quiet at first, but their eyes lit up at the sight of an ice cream shop and a toy store. They whispered their requests to their mother. Eliza glanced at the prices, hesitated, but bought it for them anyway. I don't usually let them have this stuff, she explained to me. But since you're here, we'll make an exception. For lunch, we went to the cafe she mentioned. Eliza ordered the cheapest salad for herself and pasta and cake for me and the kids. Aren't you having a main course? I asked. I'm on a diet, she smiled, pinching her waist. After the 4th one, this baby weight just won't go away. Martin doesn't say anything, but I know he prefers it when I stay in shape. She said it so casually, but it made me uncomfortable. He didn't marry you for your figure, I said, half joking. Eliza just smiled, not replying, and stirred her coffee. In the afternoon, we went to the supermarket. Eliza pulled out a small notebook with a detailed shopping list. She carefully compared prices, selected items, and occasionally picked up something not on the list, only to put it back after a moment's thought. The household budget Martin gives me is very specific, she whispered to me. But since you're here today, I can splurge a little. Let's make some real Chinese food tonight. It's been so long. I'm probably rusty. She bought some Asian ingredients, her spirits high. At the checkout, the cashier announced the total. Eliza took a card from her wallet and swiped it. The machine beeped. Insufficient funds. She froze. She tried another card. Same result. Her face flushed a deep red. She looked mortified. Fumbling through her wallet for cash. Coins clinking as she scraped together just enough to cover the bill. The people in line behind us were starting to stare. Sorry. So sorry, she mumbled, grabbing the heavy bags and practically fleeing the store. I helped her carry a bag. It wasn't until we reached the car that she let out a long breath, her eyes red. It's nothing. I just forgot about some automatic payments. There wasn't enough in the account, she said, forcing a smile. Martin usually handles all this. I only keep a little cash on me for groceries. He doesn't give you money? I asked. A little too directly. He does. He gives me the household allowance, she said, her tone defensive as she loaded the bags into the trunk. It's just, he knows I'm not good with finances, so he manages it closely. It's better this way, so I don't overspend. He's doing it for the good of the family. She got into the driver's seat, started the car, and didn't say another word. The drive home was a bit silent. That evening, Eliza cooked a feast of Chinese dishes. Even if some of the spices weren't quite right, the taste was a welcome change. The children were curious and ate more than usual. Watching them eat, the cloud over Eliza's face finally lifted a little. It's been a while. How is it? She asked. It's amazing, Eliza. You're still a great cook. She smiled, a mix of satisfaction and something else in her expression. Martin, as expected, didn't come home for dinner. After we ate, cleaned up, and put the kids to bed, we finally had some time to ourselves. We curled up on the living room sofa under the same blanket, just like when we were kids, talking about the past, our old classmates, all the silly things we used to do. We laughed so hard we cried. Eliza tiptoed to the wine cellar and came back with a bottle of red wine and 2 glasses. Let's have a little. Martin normally doesn't let me touch his cellar, but he's not here tonight. We can have a secret drink to celebrate our reunion, she said with a mischievous wink. She opened the bottle. After a few glasses, the floodgates opened. The smile on Eliza's face slowly faded, her eyes becoming distant. Meg, she said, swirling the red liquid in her glass. Sometimes, I really envy you. Envy me for what? For being an unmarried, childless, career-stagnant woman pushing 40? I joked. You're free, she whispered. You can go wherever you want, do whatever you want. You don't have to walk on eggshells, worry every day that you've done something wrong. You don't have to think twice about every dollar you spend. I put down my glass and looked at her. Eliza, be honest with me. Are you really happy? She was silent for a long time. So long I thought she wouldn't answer. Happy? Of course I'm happy, she said with a bitter smile. I have a house, a car, a respectable husband, 4 beautiful, healthy children. How many people would kill for this life? You know, when my parents talk about me to our relatives back home, they're so proud. What more could I possibly want? But you're not happy, I said flatly. Happy. She repeated the word, as if tasting something unfamiliar. What is happy? Isn't this just what life is? You marry someone, and it all boils down to bills and chores and kids. Martin, he doesn't hit me. He doesn't drink. He doesn't cheat. He provides for his family. He just has high standards. He's very strict. It's my fault. I'm just not good enough. I can never meet his expectations. Her voice got quieter and quieter until it was barely a whisper. What are his expectations? I pressed. To keep the house spotless. To raise the children to be polite and accomplished. To take care of his every need. To manage the budget perfectly. To keep my figure. To not embarrass him. She counted them off on her fingers, and then she started to laugh, a laugh that was sadder than crying. See, it's not that much. It's what any wife should do, right? I'm just useless. I can't do it right. Eliza, this is not your fault, I said, taking her hand. It was ice cold. You are wonderful. You're the bravest, best girl I've ever known. You were so smart in college. So full of ideas. That was a long time ago, she interrupted, pulling her hand away and downing the rest of her wine. Now, I'm just Martin's wife, the mother of 4 children. I'm nothing else. She stood up, a bit unsteadily. It's getting late. We should sleep. We'll talk tomorrow. She swayed as she walked up the stairs. I watched her go, my heart aching. What had happened to the bright, bold, passionate Eliza I once knew? How had she become this timid, cautious woman, walking on eggshells in a life that looked so perfect from the outside, slowly losing herself piece by piece? In the middle of the night, I was half asleep when I heard a noise downstairs. It sounded like the front door opening and footsteps, deliberately quiet. It must be Martin. A moment later, I thought I heard hushed arguing from the master bedroom upstairs. I couldn't make out the words, but the tone was anything but pleasant. Soon, the sounds stopped, and silence returned. But this silence was heavier, more suffocating than any noise. The next morning, the atmosphere was palpably different. Martin sat at the breakfast table, his face dark as he stared at his phone. Eliza's eyes were slightly swollen. She prepared breakfast in silence, her movements even lighter and more careful than yesterday. The children sensed the tension and didn't dare make a sound. Breakfast was eaten in a near-frozen silence. Martin put down his fork and looked at Eliza. The files on my desk have been moved. His voice was low but cold. Eliza flinched, her face turning pale. I haven't been in your study at all. Then why aren't they in their original position? Martin stared at her. I told you, stay out of my study. Don't touch my things. Can't you remember? I really didn't. Eliza's voice was tinged with tears. Maybe it was the kids? The children know the rules. They wouldn't go in there. Martin cut her off, his gaze sweeping over the children, who immediately bowed their heads in fear. His eyes finally landed on me for a second, his expression unreadable. Before moving away, I hope this is the last time, he said to Eliza, his tone leaving no room for argument. The rules of this house apply to everyone, including guests. That last part was said casually, but I heard the warning in it. Was he suspecting me? Or just using this as an excuse to assert his dominance? Eliza bit her lip, tears welling in her eyes, and nodded furiously. Martin stood up, picked up his briefcase, and paused at the door. By the way, my parents are coming for dinner tonight, he said. Get things ready. Miss, Joe is practically family. She can join us. With that, he opened the door and left. Eliza stood frozen for a moment. I went to put a hand on her shoulder, but she flinched away as if startled. I need to get ready, she said, her head down, and rushed to the kitchen. She began cleaning and organizing with a frantic energy, as if trying to exercise her emotions through housework. Watching her, the unease in my gut intensified. This man, Martin, and this seemingly perfect family, what other secrets of control and oppression were hidden here? His parents were coming tonight. What would that bring? For the rest of the day, Eliza was in a state of high alert. Like a soldier preparing for inspection, she deep-cleaned the entire house, top to bottom, even corners that were already spotless. She went over the dinner menu again and again, calculating the timing, terrified of making a single mistake. The children were made to change into their most formal clothes and practice greeting their grandparents. The air in the house was thick with a suffocating pressure. You don't have to be so nervous. I tried to console her. It's just a family dinner. It's different, Eliza said, polishing an already gleaming countertop without looking up. Martin's parents, they're very particular. I have to make everything perfect. She paused, her voice dropping. They always thought Martin could have married better. I can't give them any reason to criticize. I looked at her slumped shoulders and pursed lips and swallowed the rest of my words. Some splinters, if left in, only dig deeper. But you have to be careful about when and how you pull them out. In the afternoon, Eliza started cooking. This time, she didn't refuse my offer to help. She was making a traditional American-style dinner. Roasted chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans, gravy, with a starter soup and a dessert. Martin's parents are old-school New Englanders. They like this kind of food, she explained, beads of sweat on her forehead. At 6 o'clock sharp, the doorbell rang. Eliza jumped, quickly took off her apron, smoothed her hair, took a deep breath, and plastered a perfect, gracious smile on her face before going to the door. An elderly couple entered. The man was silver-haired but stood as straight as Martin, dressed in an expensive cashmere sweater. His expression was stern, his eyes sharp and appraising. The woman was equally well-dressed, her silver hair perfectly coiffed, her makeup tasteful. But the lines around her downturned mouth and her critical gaze suggested she was not an easy person to please. These were Martin's parents, Mr. and Mrs. Davenport. Father. Mother. Welcome, Martin said, greeting them with a polite hug. He was noticeably more deferential than usual. Mr. Davenport gave a curt nod, his eyes scanning the living room before landing on Eliza. Is dinner ready? Yes, Father. We can eat whenever you're ready. Eliza's voice was even more submissive than usual. And who is this? Mrs. Davenport's eyes fell on me, her gaze openly sizing me up. This is Eliza's friend from Chicago. Meg, Martin introduced. Ah, a guest. Mrs. Davenport nodded, a greeting that was barely a greeting, before her attention shifted to the children. Only then did a flicker of what could be called warmth appear on her face. She said a few words, and the children came forward to greet them politely, receiving a reserved pat on the head in return. Dinner began. At the long dining table, Mr. Davenport sat at the head, with Martin to his right and Mrs. Davenport to his left. Eliza and I sat opposite them, with the children at the far end. The atmosphere was even more oppressive than when it was just Martin. The conversation was mostly between Mr. Davenport and Martin in rapid-fire English, discussing business, the economy, and names I didn't recognize. Mrs. Davenport would occasionally chime in with news about some relative or a friend from their social circle. Eliza barely spoke, just ate quietly and attended to everyone's needs. The oppressive atmosphere made the food taste like cardboard. The chicken was roasted to a perfect golden brown, but it felt dry in my mouth. Miss Jo, what is it you do in Chicago? Mr. Davenport suddenly switched his attention to me, his sharp gaze breaking the circle of their private conversation. I work in marketing for a trading company, I replied politely, putting down my fork. Trade. A fine industry, he nodded, his expression unchanging. The global market is vast, but the competition must be intense, especially for women in senior positions. It sounded like small talk, but the appraising tone was still there. It has its challenges, I answered carefully. Eliza used to work, for a very short time. Mrs. Davenport suddenly interjected, her tone flat. But then the children came along. Family is more important. Martin needs a wife who can provide a stable home front. That is very important. You seem so independent, Miss Jo. Do you plan to work your entire life? The question was for me, but her eyes were on Eliza. Eliza's fork paused midair. I suppose it depends. I smiled, my tone gentle but firm. A career provides a sense of accomplishment and financial independence. I think that's quite important for a modern woman. Financial independence! Mr. Davenport snorted softly, just loud enough to be heard. True independence comes from having irreplaceable value and a clear role within the family structure. Dividing one's attention often leads to mediocrity in all things. Martin said nothing, just slowly cut his food, seemingly agreeing with his father. So, Miss Zhou, is this trip to Boston for business or pleasure? Mrs. Davenport changed the subject, but the probing look in her eyes remained, mostly for pleasure. And to see Eliza. Ah, a vacation. How lovely, she nodded. Then, as if an afterthought, she added, "We traveled to Asia last year. The service in Japan was impeccable. We also spent a few days in China, very bustling, developing so quickly. But some areas could certainly improve in terms of orderliness." It sounded like an objective comment, but her tone and expression gave it a different flavor. Eliza bowed her head even lower. A spark of anger ignited in me. But I reminded myself that these were Eliza's in-laws. I couldn't make a scene. Every country has its own culture and pace. It just takes some getting used to, I said, maintaining my smile. Adapting is one thing. Choosing is another. Mr. Davenport picked up the thread, looking at Martin, but speaking for everyone to hear. Martin's choice to expand the business into Asia was visionary, but the most important choice one makes is always the people and the environment one surrounds oneself with. A stable, harmonious family environment that meets expectations is the cornerstone of success. It was a blatant lecture, aimed at putting pressure on Eliza and hinting that my presence might be disrupting that stability. Martin finally spoke, his tone one of practiced nonchalance. "Father is right. Eliza has been working very hard to adapt. She's done a good job. A good job." The words were a final verdict on Eliza's day-long, high-strung performance, delivered lightly, but weighing a ton. Eliza looked up and forced a smile at Martin. It was a smile that made my heart ache. The rest of dinner reverted to their family affairs. I mostly kept quiet, observing. I observed that Mr. Davenport was intimately familiar with Martin's business, down to specific figures. Their conversation was more like a subordinate reporting to a superior. I observed Mrs. Davenport's subtle criticisms of the table setting, the food, even the children's posture. Most of all, I observed that throughout the entire meal, Eliza was like a beautiful piece of furniture. A well-trained servant. Her opinions, her feelings, were irrelevant. Only when a child made a slightly too loud noise did all eyes turn to her, filled with silent reproach, and she would always be the first to soothe or correct the child. This family, seemingly centered around Martin, was in fact remotely controlled by his parents, and Eliza and the children were just exhibits in this perfect family showcase, required to be quiet, clean, and compliant. Dinner finally ended. Eliza stood to clear the table. I naturally got up to help. Mrs. Davenport glanced at me but said nothing. In the kitchen, Eliza turned on the faucet. The sound of running water drowned out the conversation from the other room. Her back was to me. Her shoulders slumped. The confident facade she had maintained all evening crumbled. "Meg, I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice heavy with exhaustion and shame. "They're always like that. They don't mean any harm. Don't take it to heart." "I'm fine," I said, putting the plates in the sink. "Eliza, is this how it always is?" She was silent, washing the dishes. After a long moment, she said, "They don't visit often, just a few times a year. I just have to endure it." "Endure it?" I seized on the word. "You get used to it." She used that phrase again, as if it were her mantra for all of life's troubles. From the living room, I could hear Mr. Davenport's voice, asking Martin about some project's progress, mentioning risk control and financing. Martin's answers were a bit vague but confident. As I dried the dishes, a detail suddenly surfaced in my mind. Eliza's declined card at the supermarket. As a senior executive, Martin's income must be substantial. Even with a tight budget, it made no sense for his wife to have so little money for groceries, especially with a guest in the house. And his intense anxiety about the file in his study, was it really just about rules? His obsessive control over the household, his near-impossible standards for his wife, and his parents' condescending, utilitarian attitude towards everything, including marriage. These pieces didn't quite fit together yet, but a sense of foreboding was growing stronger. After we finished cleaning, we returned to the living room. The Davenports were getting ready to leave. As they were saying goodbye, Mrs. Davenport took Eliza's hand in a gesture of false intimacy. Eliza, you take wonderful care of the house and the children. We're very pleased. Martin works so hard and is under a lot of stress. You must be understanding and do your part. It gives us peace of mind. Eliza nodded meekly. I will, Mother. Miss Joe. Mr. Davenport looked at me one last time before leaving. Thank you for joining us. I hope you have a pleasant trip. Eliza is lucky to have a friend like you, but a friend, no matter how good, is still a guest. They have their own life to return to. Wouldn't you agree? His words were a thinly veiled dismissal. A polite, get out. Of course. Mr. Davenport, thank you for the reminder, I said, meeting his gaze without flinching. But a true friend not only shares the good times, but also lends a hand when it's needed, no matter how far apart they are. He seemed surprised by my directness. He gave me a long, hard look, then turned and left without another word. After seeing them off, Martin loosened his tie, a genuine weariness on his face. But when he looked at Eliza, that weariness transformed back into his usual calm, appraising stare. You did well today, he said, like a boss giving a quarterly review. The children were especially well behaved. The dinner was adequate, though the chicken was a bit dry. Pay more attention next time. Okay. I'll use a meat thermometer next time, Eliza immediately replied. Martin nodded. Then, as if remembering something, he said, I have some work to finish. I'll be sleeping in the study tonight. You go to bed early. He walked straight to his study and closed the door. Eliza stood there, staring at the closed door, her face blank, a deep exhaustion in her eyes. The children were sent to bed. We were alone in the living room again. So, you saw it all, Eliza said with a twisted smile. This is my life. Looks perfect, doesn't it? I didn't know what to say. I just took her cold hand. Honestly, you get used to it, she repeated. I don't know if for my benefit or her own. At least he gave me a home, a stable life for the children. Many women don't even have that. Eliza, you deserve better, I said, the words feeling inadequate. Better? She looked at me, her eyes vacant. What's better? Meg, I'm 38 years old. I have 4 children. If I leave, where would I go? What could I do? I can't even support myself. Her words landed like a stone in my chest. Financial independence is the foundation of confidence. She knew that, but she had been trapped for so long. She had lost the strength and courage to even think about breaking free. Maybe you could try to do something. Even from home, I suggested. You used to be such a good writer. Martin would never approve. She shook her head with a bitter smile. He's told me, my job is to manage this house. To do anything else would be irresponsible to the family, Martin said. In this house, Martin's word was law. Late that night, I lay in bed, unable to sleep. Eliza's desperate, resigned eyes haunted me. So did the Davenports' appraising, judgmental stares, and Martin's perpetually calm, controlling demeanor. Something was very, very wrong. If it was just about being a controlling chauvinist, it would be one thing horrible, but perhaps understandable in a twisted way. But Martin's behavior, especially the extreme financial control and his paranoia about certain things, like that file, hinted at something else. I remembered the snippets of conversation between Martin and his father about risk control and financing. What exactly did Martin's medical device company do? I pulled out my phone. It felt wrong to investigate my best friend's husband behind her back. But seeing Eliza's state, I bit the bullet. In the search bar, I typed Martin's company name and his name. Most of the results were corporate websites, product descriptions, and industry news. It seemed to be a mid-sized, privately held company that was doing reasonably well. Martin was indeed a senior executive, COO. On the surface, nothing seemed amiss. I then searched for news about the U.S. medical device industry, specifically about mid-sized, family-owned companies. A few obscure articles caught my eye. Due to the economic climate and increased competition, some of these companies were facing significant financial pressure and struggling to adapt. Some had even reported financial irregularities. Could Martin's company be one of them? Was that why he was so obsessively controlling the family's finances? Was that why he was so paranoid about order and stability because it was the only thing he could control? And his choice of a wife, a woman far from home, with a limited social circle, completely dependent on him. Was that also for security? For ease of control? If so, what was Eliza in his eyes? A partner? Or a low-cost asset to maintain a respectable facade and minimize risk? The thought sent a chill down my spine. I had to know more. But how? Asking Eliza directly was useless. She probably knew nothing and would deny it out of fear. Confronting Martin was out of the question. It would only make things worse for Eliza. I needed an opening. A way to get information without raising suspicion. I remembered my itinerary included a meeting with a small local distribution company, a long shot for a business connection. Maybe I could ask around. See if I could get a sense of Martin's company's reputation. As I was tossing and turning, a faint sound came from outside my door. A quiet footstep. It stopped right outside my room. Then, the barely audible sound of paper sliding under the door. Something had been slipped in. I held my breath. After a few seconds, the footsteps moved away, heading upstairs. Who was it? Eliza? One of the kids? I tiptoed to the door. In the faint light from the window, I saw a small, folded piece of paper on the floor. I picked it up and unfolded it. It was in English, the handwriting shaky and crooked, as if written in a hurry. Auntie Meg, please help Mom. Dad's computer password is Mom's birthday backwards plus my birthday. There are bad things on it. Don't say it was me. There was no signature. But I knew who it was. The eldest boy, Henry. He was about 10, with a quiet maturity beyond his years. At dinner, he had kept his head down, but I had caught him looking at his father and grandfather with a mixture of fear and suppressed anger. He had sensed something. He had seen something. Bad things. What bad things? The note felt like a hot coal in my hand. Children are the most sensitive. They can feel the tension and fear that adults try to hide. Henry was reaching out to the only outsider he thought could make a change, and he had given me the key to the secret. Martin's study. His password-protected computer. The password Eliza's birthday backwards plus Henry's birthday. The irony was sickening. He used the two most important members of his family to protect the secrets that could destroy them. I clutched the note, my heart pounding. Prying into someone's privacy was wrong. But Henry's plea, Eliza's forced smiles, the cold, oppressive atmosphere of this perfect house, it all pushed me forward. I knew if I did nothing, if I just left, I would never be at peace. I had to know what was on that computer. Tomorrow, Martin would be at work. Eliza might be out taking the kids to lessons. It would be my only chance. A risky, dangerous chance. But maybe the only way to find the truth. If I was caught, the consequences would be unimaginable. But Henry's note, "Help Mom," and the light that had gone out in Eliza's eyes kept flashing in my mind. I went to the window and looked out at the dark, quiet street. In this peaceful, affluent neighborhood, how many of these beautiful houses held their own secrets? What was the foundation of Eliza's picture-perfect happiness? I made my decision. Tomorrow, I would go into that study. Just as I took a deep breath, preparing to hide the note, the dim nightlight in the living room flickered on, then off. Then, I thought I heard the faintest sound of the study's doorknob turning. My blood ran cold. Was someone still awake? Was Martin still in the study? What was he doing? I stood frozen, listening. A dead, heavy silence. Only the sound of my own heart, beating like a drum against my ribs. That soft click of the doorknob, in the dead of night, was like a hammer blow to my heart. A cold sweat broke out on my back. I stood frozen, the damning note still clutched in my hand. No footsteps followed, no light seeped from under my door. Time seemed to stop. Maybe I'd imagined it. Maybe it was just the house settling. I forced myself to move, slowly, to the door, pressing my ear against the cool wood. Nothing but silence. After what felt like an eternity, I let out a slow breath and retreated to the bed, my heart still racing. Was it Martin? Did he sense something? Or worse, did he see Henry slip me the note? The possibilities were terrifying, but I was committed now. I carefully tore the note into tiny, irretrievable pieces and flushed them down the toilet. I lay in bed, my eyes wide open until the first light of dawn. Eliza didn't come to my room that night. There were no more strange noises, but I knew the fragile peace had been shattered. Morning brought the same routine sounds from the kitchen. I got up, my own reflection in the mirror showing dark circles under my eyes. I splashed my face with cold water, forcing a neutral expression. At the breakfast table, the mood was even heavier than the day before. Martin had a faint shadow under his eyes, too, as if he hadn't slept. He said nothing during the meal, the oppressive silence making even the children chew carefully. Eliza was pale, her movements slow as she served the food. I have to go to New York for the day to meet a client. I won't be back until late, Martin announced after his last bite, wiping his mouth. He looked at Eliza. Take the children to their music and art classes. Be on time. Henry was late once last week, and the teacher noticed. I don't want it to happen again. Okay, I will, Eliza murmured. Meg, Martin's gray-blue eyes, devoid of emotion, turned to me. What are your plans for today? Oh, I have a meeting with a small local trading company to see if there's any potential for partnership. Then I'll just wander around downtown this afternoon, I said, my voice as casual as I could make it. Martin nodded, asked no more questions, and picked up his briefcase. At the door, he paused. He glanced back at the closed study door, then his eyes swept the living room, finally resting on Eliza. Keep the house tidy while I'm gone. And don't touch what you're not supposed to touch. His tone was flat, but the command was absolute. I won't, Eliza promised, her fingers twisting the edge of her apron. Martin finally turned and left. The sound of the front door closing was like a starting gun. Eliza sagged with relief, but the worry in her eyes remained. He didn't sleep well, I said conversationally, helping clear the table. I guess not. A lot of pressure at work, Eliza replied vaguely, avoiding my eyes. Meg, I have to take the kids to their lessons in a bit. It'll be about 3 hours. Will you be okay on your own? There's food in the fridge. Don't worry about me. You go ahead, I said, looking at her. You don't look well. Are you okay? I'm fine. Just didn't sleep well. She forced a smile. I'll go get the kids ready. At 9 a.m., Eliza left with the 4 children. The sound of the car engine faded, and the huge house fell silent. So quiet I could hear my own heart beating. It was time. But first, I had to be sure. I checked every window, then walked through the house, room by room, including the master bedroom and the kids' rooms upstairs. I was alone. I stood before the study door. The dark, solid wood felt like an impassable barrier. Henry's trembling words echoed in my mind. Help, Mom. I took a deep breath and turned the cold brass doorknob. Locked. I expected that. I'd noticed Martin locked it every time. But Eliza must have a key for cleaning. Where would she keep it? I checked the usual places, the key bowl by the door, the drawers in the living room. Nothing. I went to the kitchen. In an old cookie tin on top of the refrigerator, I felt a single, separate brass key. My heart sped up. This was it. I returned to the study, inserted the key, and turned. Click. The door opened. A faint smell of leather, paper, and electronics hit me. The study was small, but immaculate. A large wooden desk faced the window, flanked by floor-to-ceiling bookshelves filled with imposing-looking books and binders. On the desk was a desktop computer, a neat stack of files, and a pen holder. Nothing else. In the corner was a small safe. Everything was a testament to Martin's rigid, controlling personality. I gently closed the door but didn't lock it. I needed a quick exit, if necessary. I went to the desk and turned on the computer. The login screen appeared. Henry's note. Mom's birthday backwards plus my birthday. Eliza's birthday was August 15th, 8/15. Backwards. That was 518. Henry's birthday. I vaguely remembered her mentioning he was a winter baby. December 3rd? I tried 5181203. Password incorrect. I tried 5181204. Incorrect again. My palms were sweating. Time was running out. Calm down. Henry would use his own birthday. What was it? I tried 5181201. Incorrect. 5181202. The screen flickered, and the desktop appeared. I let out a breath of relief. But my heart felt heavier. The boy hadn't lied. He knew the password, and he had used it to ask for my help. The desktop was clean, just a few standard icons and folders. Most were work-related, neatly labeled. Q3 2024. Reports, project contracts, vendor info. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. But Henry said there were bad things. Where? I clicked through a few documents. They were dense, legal and financial papers I couldn't make sense of. Time was ticking away. Maybe it was a hidden file? A browser history? Just as I was about to give up and check the browser, my eyes fell on the bottom right-hand drawer of the desk. It had a small combination lock, not a key lock. What could the combination be? I tried Martin's birthday. Nothing. Their anniversary. Nothing. On a desperate whim, I typed 5181202. Click. The lock opened. My hand was shaking as I pulled open the drawer. Inside, there were no papers, just a single, plain black USB drive. This was it. I quickly plugged it into the computer. It contained a single folder, named with a random string of letters and numbers. Inside were several video files, all created in the last few months. I clicked on the first one. The video was shaky, filmed from a hidden angle in what looked like a conference room. It showed Martin and two other men in suits, one of whom I vaguely recognized as his father from last night. They were speaking rapidly. I couldn't understand everything, but a few keywords kept coming up. Risk, collateral, off the books, audit. The second video was in a warehouse. Martin was directing workers to load boxes labeled medical equipment onto an unmarked truck. The lighting was poor, but Martin's face was clear. The third was a screen recording of Martin's computer. It showed a transfer being made from an overseas bank account. The amount was huge. The recipient was an offshore company with a long name. The transfer note read, "Consulting fee." The fourth video showed Martin meeting a man with Middle Eastern or Central Asian features. The man handed him a thick briefcase. Martin opened it, and it was full of bundled stacks of cash. My blood ran cold. I didn't understand all the details, but the picture was terrifyingly clear. Martin and his company were involved in some kind of financial fraud, possibly even more serious crimes. Were the medical devices faulty? Where was the money going? What was that cash deal? The bad things Henry mentioned were far worse than I had imagined. This wasn't just about domestic abuse and financial control. This was criminal. If this came out, Martin would be ruined, possibly imprisoned, and Eliza and the children would be dragged down with him. Just then, I heard the front door open downstairs, followed by the faint sound of children's voices. How could that be? Eliza said she'd be gone for 3 hours. It had only been a little over an hour. Every hair on my body stood on end. I ejected the USB drive as fast as I could, closed the windows, and pulled the drive out, shoving it deep into my pocket. I shut down the computer. It all happened in seconds. I ran out of the study, pulling the door shut behind me, but I didn't have time to lock it. Footsteps were already coming up the stairs. It was Eliza. "Meg? Are you upstairs?" she called out, a note of confusion in her voice. "Yeah, in the bathroom." I called back, ducking into the hallway bathroom and flushing the toilet to cover the sound of my frantic heartbeat. I looked at my pale face in the mirror, took a deep breath, and splashed cold water on my. I opened the door and walked out. Eliza was standing by the master bedroom, looking worried. She relaxed when she saw me. There you are. Sorry, we're back early. Henry wasn't feeling well, a bit of a fever. The teacher told me to take him home. Henry's sick? Is it serious? My heart clenched. Was it from the stress of last night? It's okay, just a bit lethargic. I put him down for a nap, Eliza said, looking worriedly towards the children's room. She looked back at me. Are you all right? You look pale. I'm fine. Probably just some jet lag, I said with a weak smile, starting down the stairs. Do you need any help? No. I'll get him some water. Eliza followed me down. My eyes were drawn to the closed study door. It was shut, but would she notice it wasn't locked? Eliza went straight to the kitchen, seemingly oblivious, but the USB drive in my pocket felt like a burning coal. I had the evidence. But what now? Tell Eliza. Could she handle it? Would she believe me? Or would she break down? Or worse, accuse me of snooping? Call the police? I was a foreigner, with evidence of questionable origin, accusing a prominent local citizen. An accusation like that would instantly detonate this family. Eliza and her children would be caught in the blast zone, with nowhere to go. Consult a lawyer? I didn't know the first thing about the law here. Anonymously send the evidence to the authorities? The outcome would be just as devastating and unpredictable for Eliza. Meg? Eliza's voice pulled me back. She was holding a glass of water, looking at me with concern. Are you sure you're okay? Are you feeling sick? Her gaze was genuinely caring, but also probing. I realized my strange behavior might have already made her suspicious. I'm fine, I said, improvising. I was just thinking that I probably have to leave tomorrow, and I'm going to miss you. I went over and gave her a hug. Her body was stiff for a moment, then she relaxed and patted my back. Silly. You can always come back. Or, when things are easier, I'll bring the kids to visit you in Chicago. Her voice cracked a little. When things are easier. When would that be? In this beautiful, suffocating cage. Would that day ever come? I pulled back and looked her in the eyes. Eliza, I said, my voice serious. No matter what happens, you have to remember, I'm always your friend. I'm always on your side. If you need help, you have to tell me. Anytime, for anything. She stared at me, her eyes welling up. She nodded hard and forced a smile. I know. You too. Take care of yourself back home. Don't work so hard. Find someone who loves you. She had sidestepped the deeper meaning of my words. Or perhaps she was too afraid to even consider it. In the afternoon, Henry felt a bit better after his nap. While Eliza was busy with chores, I stayed in my room, my mind racing, replaying the videos from the USB drive. Telling Eliza directly was too risky. I had to find a safer, more professional way to handle this, a way that would protect her and the children as much as possible. I thought of someone, Larry, our company's corporate lawyer. He wasn't an expert in international law, but he was well connected and, most importantly, trustworthy. Maybe I could ask him for advice, hypothetically, without revealing any names, about how to handle a situation like this and protect the innocent family members. But making an international call from this house was risky. With Martin's paranoia, the house could be bugged. I needed a secure way to communicate. That evening, Martin came home very late, smelling of alcohol and looking even more stressed than in the morning. He briefly asked about Henry, then retreated to his study with a dark expression. I heard the key turn in the lock. A short while later, the sound of his angry, muffled voice on the phone drifted from the room. Eliza was in the kitchen, preparing a late snack for him, her movements as quiet as a mouse, terrified of disturbing him. This was a night where no one would sleep well. I lay in bed, clutching the USB drive in my pocket. It was either the key to Eliza's escape from this gilded cage or the bomb that would destroy her entire world. I had to be careful. The next morning, I said I needed to go downtown alone to buy some souvenirs and take care of some travel arrangements. Eliza offered to come, but Martin was home that morning, having apparently canceled a meeting, so she had to stay and make lunch. She gave me detailed directions for the bus. I packed my bag, hiding the USB drive in a secret inner pocket. As I left the house and walked to the corner of the street, making sure no one was watching, I didn't go to the bus stop. I walked quickly in the opposite direction. I remembered passing a large electronics store a few blocks away. I needed to buy a couple of disposable, untraceable burner phones and some new USB drives. Then I'd find a public computer, somewhere safe like a large library or a university campus. I had to copy the evidence and contact Larry. Every step felt like walking on a tightrope. I didn't know if Martin would be suspicious of me going out alone or if he had other ways of monitoring the house. But I had no choice. Just as I was about to turn the corner towards the store, I caught a glimpse of a familiar-looking black sedan parked across the street. In the driver's seat, a figure seemed to be looking in my direction. My heart stopped. Was that Martin's car? What was he doing here? Or was I just being paranoid? I didn't dare stop or look too closely. I picked up my pace and blended into the morning crowd, but the feeling of being watched was like a physical weight on my back. I forced myself not to look back, to keep a normal pace. But my palms were slick with sweat. Was it him? Was he following me? Or was it a coincidence? I couldn't risk it. I changed my route, ducking into a large grocery store and weaving through the aisles. I used the crowds and shelves as cover, left through a different exit, and took a roundabout way to the electronics store. Before going in, I casually glanced back at the street. The black car was gone. I breathed a small sigh of relief, but my guard was still up. Inside, I quickly bought 2 cheap USB drives, the cheapest prepaid phone I could find, and a small top-up card. I paid with cash and avoided looking directly at the security cameras. From there, I went straight to the city's main public library. It was busy, open, and the public computers didn't require strict ID. I found a corner spot, plugged in the original USB drive, and quickly copied the video files to the 2 new drives. I then deleted the files from the original black drive, knowing it wasn't a secure wipe, but it was the best I could do for now. I'd try to put it back in the drawer later if I could. Next, using the new burner phone, I sent a coded text to a trusted colleague back in Chicago, asking a mundane work question, but embedding a pre-arranged signal that meant urgent, confidential, overseas call needed. It was a message for Larry. After that, I hid the new phone and the 2 backup drives in separate, secure places, one in a hidden compartment in my wallet, the other tucked inside the sole of my shoe. An old traveler's trick. I cleared my history on the library computer and left. On the way back, I was extra cautious, changing buses twice and getting off a stop early to walk the final stretch, constantly checking if I was being followed. Nothing. Maybe I had been mistaken that morning. But the unease lingered like a dark cloud. I got back to Eliza's house around noon. Lunch was ready. Martin was gone. Eliza said he'd had to go back to the office for an emergency meeting and wouldn't be home for dinner. She looked more haggard than yesterday, the dark circles under her eyes too deep to be concealed by makeup. "How's Henry?" I asked. "Much better. Just a little tired. He's resting upstairs," Eliza said, her movements slow as she set the table. "Meg, did you get everything you needed?" "Yeah. Picked up some gifts," I said, watching her closely. "Eliza, is something wrong? You seem off." The chopsticks in her hand trembled and fell to the table. She scrambled to pick them up, forcing a smile. "It's nothing. I just didn't sleep well. Martin, he was in a terrible mood last night, stayed in his study until very late. I'm a little worried. About work? Probably. He's been under a lot of stress lately." "A lot," she sighed, her words trailing off. "Eliza, we're best friends. You can talk to me," I said, taking her hand. It was freezing. She was silent for a long moment. And then tears started to fall. Silently at first, then faster, splashing onto the table. "Meg, I don't know what to do," she whispered. Her voice choked with sobs. "Last night, I overheard Martin on the phone. I couldn't understand much, but I think the company is in serious trouble. They need a lot of money. He was arguing with his father. I think I heard the word mortgage. Mortgage? On what? My heart leaped into my throat. I don't know. The house? Maybe? He was so angry. He said it was all his father's bad decisions. And he said if the financing falls through, everything is over. Eliza's words tumbled out between sobs, her shoulders shaking. I'm so scared. If we lose this house, where will we go? What about the children? I can't do anything. It was all true. The USB drive, and what Eliza had overheard, it all pointed to the same thing. Martin's company, his family's legacy, was collapsing, and he was likely using illegal means to try to save it. And this house, this symbol of their stability, was probably already gone. What else did he say? Did he mention any consequences? I asked, keeping my voice steady. Eliza shook her head, her face a mask of terror. No, but he threw something. I've never seen him lose control like that. When he came out and saw me, his eyes, they were terrifying. He asked me what I heard. I told him I didn't understand anything. He didn't believe me. She suddenly clapped a hand over her mouth, muffling a sob, her eyes wide with a fear she couldn't hide. Did he hit you? My voice turned to ice. No! No! She denied it instantly, but she instinctively pulled down the sleeve of her shirt. I caught a glimpse of a faded but distinct red mark on her upper arm, the kind left by a powerful, angry grip. Rage surged through me. That bastard, Eliza. You have to leave him, I said, staring into her eyes. She flinched as if burned and pulled her hand away, shaking her head violently. No, I can't. The children need their father. They need this home. If I leave, how will we survive? I have nothing. You have yourself. You can work. You can support yourself and your children. It's better than living in fear, I hissed, my voice low but urgent. Look at yourself. You're a nervous wreck. Do you think this is a healthy environment for your children? Henry knows something is wrong. He's scared. At the mention of Henry, Eliza's body shook. The tears flowed faster. Henry, did he say something to you? He's been acting so strange, avoiding me. He needs a mother who can protect him, not one who is as scared as he is, I said, gripping her shoulders, forcing her to look at me. Eliza, wake up. This family is not normal. Martin isn't just a chauvinist. He might be breaking the law. If he goes down, you and the children will be dragged down with him. Breaking the law? What do you mean? She stared at me, confused and terrified. I hesitated. Telling her about the USB drive now was too risky. She was too fragile. I'm just guessing, I backtracked. But what you heard, his behavior, it all points to something serious. Eliza, you have to start thinking about yourself and the children. If he really goes bankrupt, if he has huge debts and the house is taken, what will you do? You'll have nothing. And you'll be saddled with his debt. That's the real dead end. My words seemed to strike at her deepest fear. Her face went ashen, her lips trembling. What can I do? I don't know anything. He controls all the money, the house, the cars. It's all in his name. I don't even know what kind of job I could get. She was spiraling into despair. One step at a time, I said quickly. First, stay calm. Act like you know nothing. Don't confront him. Protect yourself and the kids. Second, try to find out anything you can about the family's finances. Are there any documents? Property deeds, bank statements, insurance policies? Do you know where they are? Eliza shook her head blankly. Everything important is in his study or the safe. I can't get in. I only have the household debit card, and the limit is very low. He sees every single transaction. Of course. Total control. Do you have any money of your own? Anything at all? I asked, not hopeful. She hesitated, Then her voice dropped to a whisper. A little. Sometimes I save a few dollars in cash from the grocery money. I've hidden it. It's not much. Maybe $2,000 or $3,000. For a woman who had been a homemaker for over a decade, for a family of 6, it was a pitifully small amount. But it was all she had. Keep it safe. Don't let him find it, I said, my heart aching for her. Eliza, listen, do you remember signing any papers when you got married? A prenuptial agreement? Anything about property or the children? I think so. It was all in legal English. My English wasn't that good back then. He said it was just standard procedure, so I signed. The more she thought about it, the more scared she became. Meg, did I sign something bad? It was very likely. In such an imbalanced relationship, she could have unknowingly signed away her rights to any marital assets, or agreed to take on joint debt. The situation was worse than I thought. Eliza was almost completely isolated from the legal and financial structure of her own family. When the storm hit, she would have no protection. Don't panic. Knowing is the first step. I tried to reassure her, though I was terrified myself. Over the next few days, pay attention. See if you can find any documents or overhear any key information, bank names, lawyers' names, company names. But remember, your safety comes first. Don't take any risks. Don't let him suspect anything. What are you going to do? She asked, grabbing my hand like a lifeline. I need to consult a professional. About international marriage law, quote, finances, and how to protect you and the children if the worst happens, I said, keeping it vague. But you have to hold it together, act normal, and keep the children safe, especially Henry. Eliza nodded hard. A tiny flicker of hope, mixed with immense fear, in her eyes. That afternoon, I borrowed Eliza's laptop, saying I wanted to sort through my travel photos. She didn't suspect a thing. Using a temporary email address I had set up at the library, I sent an encrypted email to Larry's private account. I didn't use any real names or locations. I just described a hypothetical situation. A friend, married and living abroad, completely dependent on her husband, discovers he may be involved in serious financial misconduct. The husband has total financial control, and the wife may have signed unfavorable agreements unknowingly. I asked for advice on how to discreetly gather evidence, understand her rights, and seek protection, both legal and physical, while still in the foreign country. I stressed the urgency, but noted that there was no immediate physical danger. I needed a smart, careful plan. After sending the email, I wiped the browser history and sent folder. Now, all I could do was wait. It was the middle of the night in Chicago. Larry wouldn't see it until his morning. My flight was the day after tomorrow. Time was running out. That evening, Martin didn't come home for dinner. Eliza was a nervous wreck, and the children were unnaturally quiet. As I was helping with the dishes, while Eliza was bathing the youngest, a loud thud came from upstairs, followed by Martin's muffled, furious roar. Even through the floor, I could feel the violence in his voice. Then came Eliza's terrified, tearful explanations. I dried my hands and ran upstairs. The sound was coming from the master bedroom. The door was ajar. I saw Martin's back. Eliza was crumpled on the floor, clutching her cheek, her hair a mess, her face streaked with tears. In Martin's hand was a picture frame. I recognized it. It was a photo of me and Eliza from college that she had brought from home and always kept on her nightstand. Who told you you could go into my study drawer? Martin's voice was distorted with rage. He advanced on Eliza, raising the frame. Was it you? Or was it that friend of yours? I didn't. I swear, Eliza cried, scrambling backwards. I don't have the key. Why would Meg go in your study? She's leaving tomorrow. Then why were my things moved? Why was the USB drive in the wrong spot? Martin roared, his eyes red. And Henry, the way he looked at me today, did you say something to him? No, Martin, believe me. Eliza shook her head, desperate. Believe you. Martin sneered, a chilling smile on his face. You useless woman. All you do is spend my money and cause me trouble. Do you have any idea what's happening with the company? Do you know we could lose everything? It's all your fault. You and the children are dragging me down. He violently threw the picture frame to the floor. The glass shattered, spraying across the rug. The image of two young, carefree women smiling was now fractured and distorted. Ah! Eliza screamed, instinctively covering her head. Dad, don't hit Mom! A small, tearful voice cried out. It was Henry. He had appeared in the doorway, his small body trembling with fear. But he stood with his arms outstretched, trying to shield his mother, glaring at his father. Martin froze. He was breathing heavily, looking from his son to his crying wife on the floor. The madness in his eyes slowly gave way to a deeper, colder fury. He slowly lowered his hand, straightened his tie. His voice, when he spoke again, was calm, which was even more terrifying than his yelling. Excellent. It seems the rules in this house have completely broken down. His eyes swept over Henry, over Eliza, and then past them, landing on me, standing in the shadows of the hallway. His gray-blue eyes were devoid of any warmth. Only appraisal, suspicion, and the cold anger of a man whose territory had been violated. Meg, he said slowly, each word like a chip of ice. It seems we need to have a talk. The air in the hallway froze. Henry was still sobbing quietly. Eliza sat on the floor, looking helplessly from me to Martin, a clear handprint already forming on her tear-stained cheek. Martin stood amidst the wreckage, having already regained his calm, controlled, almost arrogant demeanor. But the chill in his eyes could freeze hell over. I took a deep breath and stepped out of the shadows. There was no point in hiding now. Martin, I said, my voice steady, though my heart was hammering against my ribs. I think we have more than one thing to talk about. He seemed surprised by my directness. A small, humorless smile touched his lips. Indeed. The living room. He gestured. A polite but non-negotiable command. I glanced at Eliza and Henry. Henry's face was pale. His lips pressed into a thin line, but his eyes held a strange mix of fear and hope. Eliza, take Henry to his room. Go clean up, I said, my voice calm. Eliza nodded numbly and, with Henry's help, struggled to her feet. She didn't dare look at Martin and hurried away. Martin watched them go as if they were irrelevant scenery. He turned and went downstairs. I followed, my palms slick with sweat. The real fight was about to begin. The USB drive was my trump card, but I couldn't play it yet. I had to know what he knew and what he wanted. We sat opposite each other in the living room. He didn't turn on the main lights, just a single floor lamp that cast his face in shadow, making him even more intimidating. Meg, he began, his fingers steepled. Your visit seems to have caused some unnecessary disruption to my family. Disruption? I countered. I'm just visiting an old friend. Visiting a friend, he repeated, his tone mocking. And suddenly my private study is entered, and my personal belongings are disturbed. Do you have proof? I asked calmly. Proof that it was me? Or Eliza? Or are you accusing us simply because your USB drive felt out of place? Martin, an accusation requires evidence, especially when it's against your own family. I stressed the word family. His eyes narrowed. This isn't your country, Meg. In my house, my feeling is the evidence. I don't appreciate outsiders meddling in my family affairs, and I especially don't like people sneaking around behind my back. He leaned forward. I know your type. Independent, opinionated. You probably think you're saving your friend. But let me tell you something. Eliza is fine. My family is fine. We don't need any outside interference. Your help only creates chaos. Like tonight. The chaos tonight was caused by violence, I shot back, unflinching. I saw it, Martin. You hit Eliza. That is not something that happens in a fine family. His face darkened. That is a private matter between my wife and me. A misunderstanding. What right do you have to question it? I'm not a lawyer. I'm her friend. I said, my voice firm. And when I see my friend get hurt, I have every right to be concerned and to question the person who hurt her. A real family isn't held together by fear and violence, Martin. Eliza is your wife, not your employee, and not your property. He let out a short, sharp laugh and leaned back. You're so naive, Meg. You don't know Eliza. You don't know our marriage. I know what she needs better than you do. A stable life. A safe environment. A good education for our children. I'm the only one who can give her that. Your so-called freedom and independence would be poison to her. She can't survive without me. Your help is pushing her off a cliff. His words were poison-tipped needles, aimed at Eliza's deepest fears and my own convictions. That's what you think, I retorted. You've never given her a choice. You've replaced love with control, respect with fear. You probably even had her sign unfair legal documents without her understanding them, making her completely dependent on you. That's not a marriage. That's a prison. At the mention of legal documents, Martin's eyes flickered, but he quickly composed himself. You seem to know a lot, Meg. His voice grew colder, but I should remind you. Slander is a serious offense here. Everything between Eliza and me is perfectly legal, and our family finances are none of your business. I suggest you mind your own affairs and leave on schedule tomorrow. It will be better for everyone. It was a clear threat, a dismissal, and if I don't, I straightened my back. What if I believe my friend and her children are in danger? Danger? He laughed, but there was no humor in it. You've been watching too many movies. The only one in danger here is you. A foreigner making baseless accusations against a citizen in his own home. I can assure you, you will run into a lot of trouble. Your visa, your flight, perhaps even your job back in Chicago. It's a small world. A chill ran down my spine. He'd looked me up. He was willing and able to cause trouble for me. Are you threatening me? A friendly warning, he said with a shrug. Look, we don't need to make this ugly. You're just an old friend of Eliza's. Here for a few days. You saw a common marital dispute. You misunderstood. Tomorrow, you leave, and everything goes back to normal. Eliza continues to be Mrs. Davenport. The children grow up healthy, and you go back to your exciting, independent life in Chicago. Isn't that for the best? He was trying to minimize everything and using my own life as leverage. If it's so normal, why are you so scared? I pressed, staring at him. Scared of what I know? Of what Eliza might find out? Or scared of what's in your study being made public? Martin's face finally fell completely. He stood up, towering over me. Meg, he said, his voice low and menacing. Some things are better left unknown. You're in over your head. I'm giving you one last chance. Leave with your dignity intact. Otherwise, I can't guarantee what will happen next. And Eliza and the children, they might suffer some unnecessary consequences because of your good intentions. Are you really willing to gamble with their lives for your own misguided sense of justice? He had found my weakness. Eliza and the children. He was using them as hostages. My hands clenched into fists. I couldn't risk their safety. Martin was ruthless. But to just leave, to abandon Eliza in this hell, I couldn't do that either. I needed time. I needed help. I needed a better plan. Fine, I heard myself say, my voice hoarse. I'll leave tomorrow. A flicker of satisfaction crossed his face. But, I said, looking up at him, before I go, I want to see that Eliza and the children are safe. I want your word you won't touch them again. Otherwise, Martin, don't forget, this is the digital age. Some information travels very, very fast. And your company doesn't seem like it could handle too much public scrutiny. It was a bluff, but it was all I had. Martin's eyes became incredibly dangerous. He stared at me, weighing my words. After a few seconds of suffocating silence, he finally bit out. Fine. They'll be fine. Now, go to your room and pack. I don't want to see you here in the morning. He turned and went upstairs without another word. I stood there until his footsteps disappeared, then slowly uncurled my fists. My palms were damp and stinging. I hadn't won. I had temporarily surrendered, but I had confirmed his guilt, his paranoia, and his willingness to use his family as shields, and I had bought myself one more night. I went to my room and locked the door. I leaned against it, finally letting myself breathe. I couldn't just leave. I checked my burner phone. No reply from Larry yet. I had to act fast. I sent another coded message. This time, to another trusted friend with international connections, signaling that the situation had escalated and I needed immediate information on reliable support networks or women's protection agencies in the Boston area. Then, I encrypted the contents of the backup USB drives and uploaded them to several secure, private cloud accounts. The evidence was now safe, even if the physical drives were lost. The hardest part was next. Eliza. I had to talk to her one last time, to prepare her. But how? With Martin on high alert. Late that night, as the house was silent, I heard that same soft footstep outside my door. Another note slid underneath. It was from Henry. Auntie Meg, Dad is on the phone, selling things. Needs money fast. Mom is crying. I'm scared. He knows someone was on the computer. He is so angry. Be careful. Mom says you want to help her. Thank you. But Dad is very scary. My heart sank. Martin knew, and he was already trying to cover his tracks. There was no time to hesitate. I had to get a message to Eliza before I left. The next morning, I was up at dawn, making just enough noise packing for anyone listening to hear. At 7 a.m., I walked out with my suitcase. Eliza was in the kitchen, her eyes swollen shut, her face caked with makeup that couldn't hide her despair. Her look was a mixture of guilt, fear, and hopelessness. Martin sat at the table, reading the paper. He glanced up at me, his eyes cold, then went back to his reading. Meg. So early, Eliza said, her voice raspy. Yeah. Want to get to the airport with time to spare, I said with a fake smile. I turned to Martin. Martin, thanks for your hospitality. He just grunted in response. I'll walk you out, Eliza insisted. No, it's okay. I called a car, I said, but her eyes pleaded with me. She thought I was abandoning her. Okay, just to the door. At the front door, with my back to the living room, I spoke in a rapid, low whisper only she could hear. Eliza, listen to me. After I leave, find a way to use the cash you have and buy the cheapest burner phone you can find. Hide it. Wait for my message. I will find a way to get a number to you. Protect yourself and the kids, especially Henry. Your safety is the most important thing. Don't fight him. Just buy time. Wait for me? Eliza's eyes shot wide open. The deadness in them was replaced by a spark of light. She grabbed my hand, her grip like steel, and nodded fiercely, tears streaming down her face. Take care. I squeezed her hand back, then let go, and walked out of that suffocating house without looking back. I didn't have a car waiting. I walked quickly to the bus stop, pulling out my burner phone. I dialed a number I had found last night for a local women's aid hotline. I explained the situation in English. My friend, a Chinese national, her American husband, the 4 children, the long-term emotional and financial abuse, the signs of physical violence, her husband's unstable financial situation, her isolation and fear. The woman on the phone was professional and calm. She gave me options. Call 911 for immediate extraction to a shelter. Or, if the situation was not immediately life-threatening, to make an appointment with their center for confidential counseling with social workers, therapists, and legal advisors. She gave me the number for a crisis shelter. I wrote it all down. Just then, an email came through. It was from Larry. It was concise. Personal safety is paramount. Gather any evidence, possible recordings, photos of injuries, journals. He gave me the contact for a trusted Chinese-American family law attorney in Boston. He confirmed that, as an unknowing spouse, Eliza might be protected from some of her husband's business debts, but it would require a lawyer's intervention. Finally, he gave me a secure messaging app to contact him directly. I had a plan. I called the Women's Aid Center and, posing as Eliza's friend, made an appointment for her that afternoon. I checked into a cheap motel downtown. I wasn't going to the airport. I had to stay. That afternoon, I waited near the center, disguised in a hat and mask. Just before the appointment time, I saw a familiar, terrified figure hovering on the street corner. It was Eliza. She had made it out. I checked to make sure she wasn't followed, then quietly approached her. She jumped when I touched her arm. "Don't cry. Come on," I whispered, and led her inside. The center was warm and private. A kind-faced social worker named Anna listened patiently to Eliza's broken, tearful story, with me filling in the gaps. Anna explained Eliza's rights. The right to be safe, the right to marital assets, the right to apply for a protective order against Martin. She told her about the shelter, a confidential safe house. She emphasized that all decisions were Eliza's to make. For the first time in years, someone was listening. Someone was telling her, "It's not your fault. You have rights." I think I'd like to talk to a lawyer," Eliza said, her voice shaky but determined. Anna immediately provided the contact for the lawyer Larry had recommended. When we left, Eliza was clutching a folder of information and a simple, untraceable phone Anna had given her for emergencies. Her posture seemed a little straighter. The despair in her eyes was replaced by a flicker of resolve. "Meg, thank you," she said, the tears falling again, but this time they were tears of release. "Without you, I think I would have just rotted in that house." "You were the one who walked out that door," I said, hugging her. "The next part will be harder, but you're not a lochler now. Call the lawyer. Start documenting everything, and I'll work on Martin's company from my end. It could be leverage, but the children, the law will protect them, especially in cases of domestic abuse. The lawyer will explain everything." We said a quick goodbye. She had to get back before Martin. 3 days later, I was on a flight back to Chicago. Just before takeoff, I got a text from Eliza on her new phone. It was a single word: safe. The plane climbed into the sky. I looked down at the shrinking city, my heart a mix of sorrow and hope. This wasn't just about escaping an abusive husband. It was about Eliza breaking free from a cage built in the name of love and finding the independent woman who had been lost for 15 years. Back in Chicago, I began a long process of remote support. The lawyer in Boston guided Eliza through secretly collecting evidence: photos of old bank statements, recordings of Martin's verbal abuse, a doctor's report on her old injury. With help from a trusted friend in corporate investigations, we confirmed that Martin's family business was on the verge of collapse, propped up by fraud and illegal asset transfers. This information, strategically hinted at by her lawyer, became Eliza's most powerful weapon. Not to blackmail, but to show Martin that she was not the ignorant, helpless woman he thought she was. 2 months later, armed with enough evidence, Eliza secretly filed for a protective order and legal separation. The court, based on her evidence and a statement from Henry, granted the order, forcing Martin to move out of the house. He was furious. But faced with the law and the unspoken threat of what Eliza knew about his business, he was forced to negotiate. The separation was a long, grueling battle. But with the support of the lawyer and the Women's Center, Eliza grew stronger every day. She started therapy. She got a part-time job tutoring Mandarin. It was a small income, but it was hers. The smiles returned to her children's faces. I talked to Eliza regularly. Her voice, once trembling and fearful, is now steady. "Meg, I took the subway to the lawyer's office by myself today. I didn't get lost." "Meg, I got a part-time job at a cafe. The owner is really nice." "Meg, Henry told me today. Mom, you don't seem so scared anymore. I know the road ahead is still long and difficult, The divorce, the custody battle, the financial settlement, each will be a war. Martin and his family will not give up easily, but Eliza, my best friend, after being consumed for 15 years, is finally, slowly, piecing herself back together. She is no longer the perfect, smiling Mrs. Davenport, terrified of her husband's footsteps. She is learning how to be Eliza Chen again. The process is painful and slow, but she is on her way, and I'll be right where she can see me, telling her, "Don't be afraid. I'm here." The months that followed were a grueling marathon of legal paperwork, late-night phone calls, and high-stakes maneuvering. Martin didn't go down quietly. He hired an expensive, high-powered legal team that attempted to paint Eliza as an emotionally unstable immigrant who didn't understand traditional American family values or the complexities of a high-pressure corporate life. I spent my nights in Chicago on the phone with her, often until the sun began to peek over the lake. "He's trying to say I'm an unfit mother, Meg," she whispered one night, her voice trembling but not breaking. "His lawyers filed a motion claiming I have no means to support the children and that I'm planning to flee the country with them. They're throwing everything at the wall to see what sticks." "Eliza," I told her, my own jaw set tight. "But we have the evidence of the protective order. We have the medical records, and we have the USB. The USB drive was the nuclear option. Under the guidance of her lawyer, Robert Vance, the one Larry had recommended, Eliza didn't go to the police immediately. Instead, Vance used the information to stall Martin's aggressive tactics. It was a delicate game of mutually assured destruction. If Martin tried to strip her of the children, Vance hinted that the irregularities in the Davenport family business would be brought to the attention of the SEC and the Department of Justice. By late autumn, the cracks in Martin's world became impossible to hide. The bad things Henry had seen were worse than simple embezzlement. Martin's company had been bypassing safety protocols on heart valves, selling subpar medical equipment to hospitals in developing nations while laundering the profits through shell companies in the Caymans. The FBI finally raided the Davenport corporate offices on a Tuesday morning in November. I flew out to Boston the following weekend. The perfect house in the suburbs was gone, seized as part of the corporate investigation and the looming bankruptcy. Martin was out on bail, living in a cramped apartment provided by his parents, awaiting a trial that would likely send him to federal prison for a decade. I found Eliza in a modest two-bedroom apartment in a diverse, bustling neighborhood in Quincy. It was a far cry from the sterile mansion. There were piles of laundry on the sofa, a half-finished puzzle on the table, and the smell of actual cooking, garlic, ginger, and soy permeating the air. The children weren't porcelain dolls anymore. They were loud. They were messy. Henry was playing a video game, shouting at the screen with a vigor I hadn't seen before. Hannah was practicing her violin, and though she missed a few notes, she didn't look over her shoulder in fear. Eliza met me at the door. She was wearing leggings and an oversized college sweatshirt. She looked tired, really tired, but the placid, porcelain mask was gone. Her face was alive. "It's small," she said, gesturing to the living room as she hugged me. "And the legal fees took almost everything we clawed back in the settlement. But it's ours, Meg. The lease is in my name." My name. We sat on her small balcony that evening, wrapped in blankets, looking out at the distant lights of the Boston skyline. "The Davenports offered me money," she told me quietly. "A lot of it. Right before the indictments came down, they wanted me to sign a non-disclosure agreement and a statement saying Martin never laid a hand on me. They said it would secure the children's future. And, I asked, I told them my children's future wasn't for sale. She said, a hard, proud glint in her eyes. "I'm working as a translator for the court system now. It's not a corner office, and I have to take the red line at 6 a.m. But every cent I earn belongs to me. I don't have to ask permission to buy milk. I don't have to hide $20 bills in a cookie tin." She looked at her hands. Hands that were no longer shaking. "I spent 15 years trying to be the perfect wife for a man who wanted a statue, not a partner," she continued. "I let him convince me that I was nothing without him. But when I look at Henry and the way he stands up straighter now, I realize that leaving wasn't just about saving myself. It was about showing them that love shouldn't hurt, and order shouldn't feel like a cage. Before I left to catch my flight back to Chicago, Henry walked me to the Uber. He had grown an inch since the summer. "Auntie Meg?" he said as I opened the car door. "Yeah, Henry? Thanks for helping her," he said, his voice cracking slightly with the onset of puberty. "I used to think that's just how life was. Quiet and scary. But Mom, she's different now. She sings in the kitchen. Sometimes she even burns the toast and just laughs about it." He smiled, a real bright American kid smile. "It's better this way." As the car pulled away, I looked back and saw Eliza standing in the glow of the apartment's front lamp. She wasn't a template for success anymore. She wasn't the envy of our old classmates. She was a woman who had lost a fortune and gained her soul. She waved, a small, strong figure against the vast Massachusetts night. I realized then that she didn't need me to be her backbone anymore. She had found her own. I checked my phone as the Uber hit the highway. A group chat from our old high school friends was buzzing with photos of expensive vacations and new cars. I hovered my thumb over the screen for a moment, then simply swiped it away. I looked out at the road ahead, thinking of the mid-level life I had back in Chicago. It didn't feel so mid-level anymore. It felt like freedom, and as Eliza had taught me, that was the only achievement that actually mattered. 1 year later, the headline in the Boston Globe was small, buried in the business section. "Former medical executive sentenced to 8 years for fraud and money laundering." I sat in a coffee shop at O'Hare Airport, staring at Martin Davenport's mugshot on my phone. He looked older, his hair thinning. The arrogant spark in his eyes replaced by the hollow stare of a man who had lost his kingdom. He had taken a plea deal, trading information on his father and their offshore partners for a reduced sentence in a federal facility in Pennsylvania. I closed the browser and boarded my flight. This time, I wasn't a secret agent on a rescue mission. I was just a friend going to a housewarming party. Eliza had moved again. Not to another sterile suburb, but to a refurbished loft in Jamaica Plain. She had used the final bit of her divorce settlement what Robert Vance had managed to claw away from the bankruptcy trustees to put a down payment on a place that was hers alone. When I arrived, the atmosphere was a total reversal of that chilling visit 2 years ago. The door was unlocked. Music real. Loud. Indie rock was thumping from a speaker. "Meg, you're here!" Eliza handed to me. She was wearing jeans with a smudge of yellow paint on the thigh and a t-shirt that said, "Well-behaved women seldom make history." She looked radiant, not the polished, porcelain radiance of a trophy wife, but the glowing, messy health of a woman who slept soundly at night. The loft was filled with people. There were her coworkers from the court, a few neighbors, and Robert Vance, who was laughing over a craft beer. The most striking change, however, was the wall of truth. In her old house, photos were staged and perfect. Here, a large corkboard was covered in chaotic, beautiful reality. Henry making a goofy face with a mouthful of pizza. Hannah with messy hair after a soccer game. Eliza herself, squinting at the sun, looking exhausted but happy at a community garden. "How are they?" I asked, nodding toward the kids, who were currently leading a pack of neighborhood children in a game of hide-and-seek. "They're resilient," Eliza said, handing me a glass of wine, not a vintage from a locked cellar, but a decent $15 Malbec. "Henry is in therapy, and it's helping. He's learning that he doesn't have to be the man of the house. He just gets to be a kid. And the little ones, they barely remember the rules anymore." She led me to a small desk in the corner of the room, nestled under a bright window. On it sat a laptop and several notebooks filled with her elegant, flowing handwriting. "I started a column for a local digital magazine," she said, her voice brimming with a quiet kind of pride. "It's called The Uncurated Life. It's about the myth of the perfect immigrant family, about the invisible walls women build around themselves. My first piece got 10,000 shares last week." "Eliza, that's incredible," I said, truly moved. "You finally started writing again." "I had to. she whispered. I had to find the words I buried for 15 years. Martin didn't just take my money and my time, Meg. He took my voice. I'm taking it back, one paragraph at a time. Later that evening, after the guests had filtered out and the kids were finally asleep, we sat on her fire escape, the cool Boston air smelling of salt and autumn leaves. My parents finally called from home, Eliza said suddenly. They heard about the trial. For months, they were so ashamed. They kept asking me why I couldn't just endure for the sake of the family reputation. They told me I had lost face for everyone. What did you tell them? I sent them a photo of the kids laughing, she said, and I told them that face is a mask, but a life is a soul. I told them I'd rather be a shameful survivor than a perfect ghost. They're coming to visit next month. I think they're finally starting to understand. She leaned her head on my shoulder, just like we used to do on the swings when we were 10 years old. You know, Meg, she said softly, when I was in that house, I used to look at your life in Chicago and think you were the one who was lost. I thought I had reached the finish line, and you were still at the start. I was so caught up in the frosting, the luxury, the status, the appearance. She looked at her reflection in the glass door. But the frosting was poisonous. It was hiding a rot that would have eventually killed me. You didn't have the frosting, but you had the cake. You had the substance. You had the freedom to be mediocre. To be messy. To be you. I smiled, thinking of my mid-level apartment and my mid-level job. It's a pretty good cake, Eliza. It's the best, she agreed. The next morning, as I headed to South Station to catch the train, I felt a profound sense of closure. The tightness I had felt in that suburban villa 2 years ago was gone, replaced by a sense of vast, open possibility. I realized then that the success template we are all taught to follow is a trap. Eliza had followed it to the letter and ended up in a prison. I had ignored it and ended up with the keys to her cell. As the train pulled out of the city, I opened my laptop and started a new document. I wasn't a marketing executive in that moment. I was just a woman with a story to tell. I typed the first line. I heard him on the phone in the pantry. His voice hushed. I looked out the window as the Massachusetts woods blurred into a streak of green and gold. Eliza had found her voice, and in helping her, I had finally found the courage to use mine. We were no longer upstairs and downstairs or successful and unsuccessful. We were just two friends, finally breathing the same free air, writing our own endings. And I'll be right where she can see me, telling her, "Don't be afraid. I'm here."